2008, the world was burning. Banks collapsed, currencies faltered, and trust in the system was shattered. Then from the shadows came a message. A white paper, a promise of freedom, Bitcoin. It was designed as the weapon against corruption, a code that replaced the middleman, a currency that answered to no authority. It carried the hope of liberation, the dream of financial sovereignty. And for a moment it worked. People believed. They mined, they traded, they built a movement. Bitcoin became more than technology. It became rebellion. But revolutions rarely stay pure. Power always finds a way to reclaim its throne. As Bitcoin spread, so did surveillance, regulation, and manipulation. The system it was meant to destroy learned how to use it. The elites did not fear Bitcoin, they studied it. They watched its network, tracked its wallets, and waited for the perfect time to move in. While the people believed they were escaping the old order, the architects of money were preparing to integrate it. The governments allowed it to grow just enough to normalize digital currency. The corporations built infrastructure to control its liquidity, and Wall Street quietly positioned itself to own the rails. By the time Bitcoin reached mainstream acceptance, it was no longer the people's revolution. It was a managed asset, a tradable symbol of rebellion. Its blockchain was open, but its destiny was closed. It no longer threatened the system. It served it. Then came the next phase. As attention stayed locked on Bitcoin's price, new networks were being built underneath it. Ethereum began shaping the programmable layer of finance. XRP evolved into the bridge for instant global settlement. And while the world argued about Bitcoin's next halving, the real financial reset was being coded into existence. Bitcoin had become the perfect distraction, the symbol that kept the world watching the front door while the future was being engineered behind it. A digital idol for the masses while the architects constructed the true system beneath the surface. The forgotten king still holds his crown, but the throne has already moved. This is the story of Bitcoin, the symbol of freedom that became the cornerstone of control. Part 1, the creation of the digital rebellion. The year was 2008. The collapse of Lehman Brothers sent shockwaves through the global economy. People lost homes, savings, and faith in the system. Governments printed money to save the same banks that caused the crisis. Confidence died, and from its ashes came a spark that would ignite a revolution. An anonymous name appeared. Satoshi Nakamoto. A white paper written in silence described a new kind of money, one that needed no permission, no banks, no borders. Bitcoin, a digital currency that ran on mathematics instead of trust, verified by a global network of machines instead of institutions. It was elegant, pure, incorruptible. The code promised freedom, and for a moment it felt real. Early adopters were not investors, they were believers. Each transaction was an act of rebellion. Each block mined was a declaration of independence from the financial elite. Bitcoin was more than code. It was a movement, but revolutions are fragile. They begin with chaos and end with structure. As Bitcoin grew, it began to attract attention from the very powers it sought to escape. Governments labeled it a threat. Banks dismissed it as a fad, yet behind closed doors both were studying it carefully. The system that was supposed to end money manipulation had accidentally shown the blueprint for a new kind of control. By 2013, the first exchanges appeared. Fiat-to-crypto bridges were built and Bitcoin's purity began to dilute. The same institutions it was meant to replace found entry points. The network that was supposed to exist outside the system started to merge with it. Every on-ramp and exchange became a checkpoint. Every KYC formed a leash. Still, the illusion of freedom held strong. The narrative was too powerful to die. Bitcoin became the poster child for the digital revolution. It was the rebel turned celebrity. The freedom code turned brand. But as its value rose, so did its chains. In truth, Bitcoin was never designed to run the world economy. Its speed, scalability, and energy demands limited its reach. It was a proof of concept, a message to the world that money could exist without masters. Yet that message was hijacked. The very system it fought against was preparing to rewire it into their own vision. The financial elite did not need to destroy Bitcoin. They only needed to contain it. Let it serve as a symbol of rebellion while they built the infrastructure beneath. They gave the world a flag to wave while they constructed the fortress around it. Bitcoin had started as an idea of liberation, but ideas can be weaponized. and the movement that once shouted freedom was slowly being absorbed into the same machine it tried to escape. The digital rebellion had been born, but it was already being rewritten. Part 2. The institutional capture. By 2016, Bitcoin had evolved from a digital experiment into a global obsession. What began as a symbol of rebellion was now the most watched asset on Earth. Governments could not stop it, banks could not ignore it, and Wall Street had found its opening. At first, the institutions came quietly. Hedge funds bought small allocations. Payment processors began offering Bitcoin exposure. The same media outlets that once mocked it started praising its innovation. The tone had shifted. What was once dangerous was now desirable. But this was no acceptance, it was infiltration. When Wall Street moves into a market, it does not join the revolution. It buys it. Derivatives, futures, and ETFs began to emerge. Paper Bitcoin flooded the markets. For every real coin mined, 10 more were traded on screens. The asset that was meant to free people from manipulation was being absorbed into the same machine it was built to destroy. Then came the regulators. The very agencies that ignored Bitcoin for years suddenly became its gatekeepers. Licensing, taxation, compliance. The walls closed in. Exchanges bent under pressure, handing over customer data. Privacy coins were delisted. Self-custody was discouraged. Slowly, the network of freedom became a monitored ecosystem. The illusion was perfect. Bitcoin still appeared decentralized, but the flow of capital and liquidity was now controlled from the top. The banks that once rejected it now held it in cold storage for clients. The investment giants that once mocked it now dictated its price. The rebellion had been domesticated, and while the public celebrated institutional adoption, they missed the real move. The same institutions were already building the next layer, programmable money. Ethereum became their playground, a network they could mold, regulate, and integrate. Bitcoin's simplicity was its strength, but also its weakness. It could not adapt to the new system, it could only watch. Behind the scenes, the financial elite were designing the future. A hybrid system where digital assets would exist, but only within controlled parameters. Bitcoin would serve as the anchor, the digital gold that gave legitimacy to their creation. Ethereum would handle tokenization. XRP would bridge the settlement. The capture was complete. The system no longer feared Bitcoin. It used it. Every revolution has its turning point. For Bitcoin, that moment came when the enemy stopped fighting and started investing. When rebellion became regulation. When freedom became a product. Bitcoin had not failed. It had succeeded too well. And the architects of money knew exactly how to turn its victory into their advantage. The people believed they had won, but the system had simply changed its skin. Part 3. The perfect distraction. As the years passed, Bitcoin transformed from a movement into a monument. The dream of decentralization had been polished into a corporate slogan. It no longer frightened the system. It legitimized it. Every headline, every price surge, every bull run kept the world watching the charts while the real game unfolded quietly behind the curtain. Bitcoin had become the perfect distraction, a digital spectacle of freedom that masked the construction of control. While investors argued over halvings and price predictions, the elites built the new rails of finance. Tokenization, smart contracts, programmable money. The infrastructure of the next system was already online, and Bitcoin's glow kept everyone's eyes away from it. Governments learned to love the illusion. They could point to Bitcoin as proof of innovation, while building their own centralized digital currencies in the background. Banks used its popularity to justify blockchain adoption. Regulators used it as bait, welcoming public enthusiasm while steering liquidity toward compliant, controllable platforms. The people believed they were early adopters of freedom. In truth, they were early test subjects of digital control. Bitcoin's volatility became its leash. Every boom drew attention. Every crash spread fear. Media cycles painted it as both salvation and risk, ensuring the public remained emotionally invested but politically powerless. It was the perfect narrative engine, an endless loop of hope and panic that distracted from the quiet codification of a programmable economy. Meanwhile, Ethereum grew into the financial skeleton of the new order, embedding institutions deep within its architecture. BlackRock, JP Morgan, the World Economic Forum, all quietly building smart contract ecosystems. XRP advanced in silence, connecting ledgers across borders. solving the global liquidity problem Bitcoin could never touch. By the time the world realized tokenization had begun, the foundation was already in place. Bitcoin was no longer the revolution, it was the decoy. It still carried the banner of freedom, but it had been absorbed into the narrative of progress, the friendly face of a digital empire. Its mining was centralized, its liquidity was regulated, and its influence carefully contained. It was valuable, but no longer dangerous. The system had learned that total opposition creates resistance. Controlled inclusion creates obedience. And so, Bitcoin became the perfect paradox, celebrated rebellion used to fuel conformity. The people held digital gold, but the vault belonged to someone else. Part 4. The Reset and the Rise of Programmable Money by 2025. The world was standing on the edge of a quiet reset. Inflation raged, currencies weakened, and the old financial order was losing its grip. The public cried for solutions. The elites already had one. Tokenization. They called it innovation, a digital upgrade to make the system faster, fairer, and smarter. But beneath the glossy headlines and public announcements, the plan was centuries old. Control the money and you control the people. The only difference now was the tool. Code. The transition began slowly. Central banks tested their own digital currencies. Corporations tokenized assets. Governments rewrote laws to make blockchain regulation look like modernization. Every step brought the world closer to a single truth. The new financial system would not be printed, it would be programmed. And as the transformation accelerated, Ethereum became the perfect foundation. Its smart contracts, compliance structures, and programmable tokens allowed governments and institutions to automate power. They could build economies where every dollar had a rule, every transfer a condition, every asset a history. Transparency on the surface, total surveillance beneath. Bitcoin, meanwhile, was being cast into its final role. The symbol of digital value, the digital gold backing a world that no longer used cash. It would remain valuable, but only as collateral, a reference point for stability in a system it no longer controlled. The elites did not need to destroy it, they needed to place it in a museum. Bitcoin would serve as the monument of freedom, a reminder of what once was, while Ethereum and XRP ran the machinery of the new economy. XRP moving value across nations at light speed, Ethereum governing tokenized assets and compliance. Together they formed the skeleton of the new world's programmable infrastructure. The banks no longer needed to print money. They could mint it. They could lock it, burn it, or reissue it with a click. Monetary policy was no longer an art of persuasion. It was a function of code. The global reset had arrived quietly, without chaos, without consent. People cheered at faster payments and cheaper transfers. They celebrated what they thought was progress. But every benefit carried a price. Freedom was traded for convenience, privacy for efficiency, control for comfort. Bitcoin's dream of liberation had given birth to a machine far more precise than the one it replaced. And the moment it was accepted by the very powers it opposed, it lost its rebellion. The revolution had been absorbed. What began with a white paper had evolved into a world ledger, one where every transaction could be watched, measured, and approved. The reset was complete. The question was no longer whether the new system would arrive. It was whether anyone would notice when it did. Part 5. The Forgotten King. Bitcoin still stands at the top of the mountain it built. Its price moves nations, its name commands attention, its symbol inspires loyalty. But behind the glow of its success lies a quiet truth. The king no longer rules the kingdom. The revolution it began has been hijacked. The institutions it opposed now wear its crown. The governments it threatened now regulate its every move. The banks that once mocked it now trade it, store it, and profit from it. The world sees Bitcoin as victory, but it is a victory written by the same hands it tried to defy. Bitcoin has become digital gold, locked away, observed, and idolized. It no longer shapes the future of finance. It preserves the memory of what freedom once felt like. Its blockchain still runs honest and pure, but its influence has been absorbed by the networks that came after. Ethereum writes the rules of programmable money. XRP connects the value of nations. Both are shaping the rails of the new system, while Bitcoin remains the trophy of the last rebellion. The Forgotten King still sits on his throne, but the castle around him has changed. He was meant to free the people from financial tyranny. Yet now he watches as the world embraces digital chains forged from his own design. The miners that once symbolized independence are now corporate giants. The wallets that once promised privacy now comply with regulation. The decentralized dream has been surrounded by gates of convenience and policy. And still, the illusion persists. The crowds cheer when Bitcoin's price rises, believing they are winning against the system. But the system has already won. It owns the exchanges, it writes the laws, it manages the rails. It controls the liquidity that moves the very asset meant to overthrow it. Bitcoin's code remains unbroken, but its narrative has been rewritten. It no longer carries rebellion, it carries reassurance. The elites allow it to shine because it keeps hope alive while the machinery of control hums beneath it. The king lives, but the kingdom serves another. Bitcoin stands as the monument of resistance, while Ethereum builds the infrastructure of control. And XRP waits as the silent bridge for what comes next. The forgotten king still has his followers, still has his believers. But history will remember him not as the ruler of the new financial age, but as the spark that ignited it, and the symbol that let the architects of power finish their design unnoticed. The king who began the revolution now guards the gates of the new empire. The end of the beginning. The world believes it has entered a new age of freedom, digital assets, instant transactions, global access. But the promise of liberation has quietly become the architecture of control. The same forces that once printed paper now mint tokens. The same institutions that collapsed the old system are coding the next one. Bitcoin began as defiance, a spark in the darkness. It showed humanity that value could move without permission, that money could exist without masters. But as the years passed, the movement was absorbed, reshaped, and repurposed. The rebellion was profitable, so it was bought. The code was incorruptible, so the narrative was changed. Ethereum now carries the blueprint of programmable power. XRP connects the silent corridors of global settlement. The old financial order has not been destroyed. It has been reborn in digital form, wrapped in transparency, cloaked in efficiency, and all of it made possible by the revolution that Bitcoin began. The king remains, but his empire has moved beneath him. He watches as the ledgers he inspired become tools of surveillance and automation. The dream of freedom has become the foundation of the new cage. And yet, deep within the code, the original message still flickers. Decentralization, independence, truth. The story of Bitcoin is not the end. It is the first chapter of the digital age of money. The proof that ideas can change systems, but also the warning that systems always fight back. The true battle has never been between blockchains or coins. It has always been between control and freedom. The financial reset is not coming. It is already here. The rails are built, the rules are written, the code is live. The question is no longer whether Bitcoin can survive. The question is whether its message can. Because in the end, money is not just currency. It is power, and power never disappears. It only changes hands. Bitcoin began the revolution, but the war for the soul of money has just begun.